Today on Kicks Chronicles, we chat life and kicks with brand owner Matt O. We talk about the kicks that he loved growing up, including the Phat Farms and the Reebok BB 4600s. We also get into his current collection. We also talk about how important it is for brands to clearly communicate a story in their marketing. And lastly, Matt breaks down how much it actually costs for a brand to create and produce a shoe. This is Kicks Chronicles. Yes, my people, Big PROZECH in the place once again, and you already know what it is. Episode 60 of your sneaker and lifestyle podcast, Kicks Chronicles. I'm your boy PROZECH. Welcome once again. Thank you very much for being here, being with us right now. Much appreciated. As you can probably tell by my voice, still battling the old cooties, lurgies, whatever you call them. You get me? Still battling these things. You get me? But we move. You get me? We move. I promise we're not stopping. So we're moving, we're cooking with gas. And this week's episode is a banger. First and foremost, thank you for everyone that managed to watch last week's episode with Stephanie Howard from N State. Amazing opportunity to speak to someone that's designed some pretty iconic kicks and just get their insight. I also saw over the weekend that N State were at Complex Con, and Complex dropped their 10 of the year as well, their sneaker top 10, which is controversial to say the least. We're not really going to get into that now, but maybe we will be in the coming weeks. I've got something cooking in terms of a Christmas special with a couple of guests. Where we'll definitely dive into the old sneaker of the year chat and debate. So looking forward to that. But yeah, big up to N State for dropping their kick at SneakerCon, and obviously Stephanie Howard for jumping on the podcast last week. For anyone that missed any of those things that I'm referring to, please make sure to go and check back, whether it be on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, any place that you know that we post up and we share what we're doing. Feel free to go back on there. This week we're talking to Streetwear and Sneaker brand owner Matt O. He's actually the owner of a brand called Volecoeur. I'm probably saying that wrong because it's got a little bit of a French twang because he's French Canadian. You get me? Volecoeur. But the brand is very, very cool, and above that, Matt is an absolute gentleman, a fantastic guy. This is part one of our interview with the creative. First and foremost, we start off and he shares his love for his Phat Farms. You know, we always go back to the beginning. He talks about Phat Farms. He talks about the Reebok BB 4600. And you know, when people start talking about Reeboks, you know, that's close to my heart. So we love that from back in the day. Matt also shares an interesting take on buying reps, buying fake kicks, and an approach, a take that I've never heard before. But almost understandable. Not something I would potentially do, but understandable. And I'd love to get your opinion on his approach to fakes. Let us know what you think about what he said in the comments below. Make sure to stick around for that. He also gives us his thoughts on the changing taste within the culture and people potentially moving away from basketball kicks to runners, where brands like New Balance and Saucony were coming more and more. And Asics, I was going to say Asics, Asics are becoming more and more popular in the last sort of 6-7 months. And obviously we're seeing a slight decline from brands like Nike and Jordan brand. So yeah, he sheds a little bit of light on that. We also talk about the importance of storytelling for brands in communicating to their core audience when they're about to do a drop. But you also talk about, or I should say, Matt lifts the veil. Like, and I have to big up Matt for doing this, but he lifts the veil because we like to talk real things here, real numbers. He lifts the veil on what it actually costs for a brand to create and manufacture a shoe. Like, actual cost. He breaks it all the way down, and we love that. And we love that. I really, really love that, because I'm nosy like that. I want to actually know, because one day I might actually want to do it and just have an understanding. And somebody might be watching this, and you might have aspirations to be a brand owner, to create your own signature shoe at one point, and have no idea what it costs to create a last and how many lasts need to be created in order for you to be able to do a full run. And when you find out how much it costs, you're going to have to rethink that whole situation. I'm being real. You get me? So make sure to stick around for that. As I said, awesome guest. This is part 1 of 2 parts. I'll be dropping the next part next week, Sunday, same time, same place. You get me? And we get deeper into his collection. He gives further thoughts on the culture. And he tells us what 2 pairs of shoes he would have with him if he was stuck on a desert island. You know how we do desert island kicks. It's in full effect. Overall, an amazing installment, a great interview. And yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy it. So with all of that being said, I'm your boy PROZECH. This is Kicks Chronicles, and this is part 1 of our interview with the head of Volecoeur, Phat. Enjoy. Yes, my people. Big PROZECH back again, and you already know what it is, man. We are here with another illustrious guest. You get me? I have the one and the only Phat. You get me? Coming straight out of Quebec, Canada. You get me? Like, this is, I'm seeing these transatlantic things out here, broski. We don't play games. You get me, man? We keep it moving, right? Head designer at Volecoeur. Doing his thing, you get me, and he's got a couple of bits in the pipeline. He might drop a couple bits. You never know. But yeah, broski, what is good, man? What is kicking, man? Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Hey man, thank you for the warm welcome, dude. It's always a pleasure to talk to some of my buddies over across the pond, as we like to say. And I discovered your podcast through some mutual friends, and I just love how well spoken you are on Kicks, and I just said, we got to chop this up. We got to chop it up. I need to know this guy. So I'm glad to be here.
I'm gonna break the fourth wall a little bit, because obviously people will know, right, that I reach out to a lot of people via Instagram, and you know what, you got to have a bit of a thick skin when you do that, right? And you're reaching out to people. These creatives out here, they're busy people. You get me, man? They got a lot of stuff going on. Plus, some of them are not the most well organized. So you're reaching out to people. They're saying yes, and it'll be a 3-4 months before they even complete the thing. But I received one of the nicest messages I've received in literally ages, like from Phat, and it was basically just alluding to what he basically just said there, and I was like, this guy's basically done my job for me, man. I need to get this guy on the podcast. By the way, I saw your profile. I saw the things that you were doing, and I said, I need this guy on the podcast. This is the exact type of guy I need on the podcast. A designer, a person with an opinion on kicks. You get me? An obvious sneakerhead. Bro, I need to chat to this guy about kicks. So, bro, let's take it all the way back to the beginning. Let's take it all the way back to the start. Talk to me about your first love, man. Talk to me about that shoe that got you in the game.
So the shoe that got me into sneakers was, there's like 2 moments. One is back when I was a kid, and oh my God, here we go. That's like the first few words as soon as someone gets into that story. Oh, when I was a kid, and then everybody's like, oh, it's one of those stories. No. Hold on. Just listen. You'll see it's not a different trajectory. When I was a kid, there was one sneaker that I really liked. I was never into shoes, right? To be very honest, I think like the sneakerheads today, if they, many of us weren't aware of the shoes we had, right? And like our parents would buy us something cheap, something under $100, and that was it. Like you run around, you play outside and that stuff. I was a kid in elementary school, and people really getting into like Phat Farms or like high tops or Air Forces with the straps, and I was like, oh, like I want a shoe with straps, this and that. I wasn't able to get them. Ain't nobody paying whatever the price was at the time for, and you're gonna notice I'm bringing up Phat Farms quite a bit. They were, for some reason, they were just really big in my school.
Farm is deep. That's a deep cut. I like that.
It's a deep cut, of course. So I had so my alternative from my mom was, what can you find at Winners, which is TK Maxx essentially. And
Respect it.
we found a Reebok BB 4600. Okay. Basically, what this was like a white basketball shoe with red hits. It had the classic Reebok Union Jack next to the Reebok, like the old school, like classic Reebok, plush, smooth materials. It was great. I felt super fly in them. I thought it was so cool, and I love the high tops. And I actually have a shoe here that kind of looks like it. I don't have it, but
Come on.
this is, if you're watching the podcast, this is the Off-White Off-Court 3.0s.
Oh, wow.
It almost looked exactly like this, but Reebok.
Oh,
Okay, like this little bit here, this little window had the Reebok logo with the Union Jack in it. It was really like this shoe, essentially.
I really like that.
I was able to.
That's a vibe, man.
Oh yeah, I came full circle on that. I was able to get like an off-white version of it, and I was just like, I'm good. You know what I mean? But that's
the elevated version of it. That's like, you ever say the entry level, and now you've got the super high end with it. No, you're nice.
Exactly. But that's not what got me into shoes. That's the shoe. You said first love. That's the first love. That was the first one that marked me. That I was like, when I get into shoes, like my hunt started with trying to look for something that looked like that shoe or finding that exact shoe. When the hunt started itself was a time, oh my God, I don't know if it was like 7 years ago now, something like that. I keep forgetting. Every time I tell this story, I'm like, I don't know, sometime around 2015, 16, 14, somewhere around those 3 years. And I said, I wanted to start to look into like getting that shoe. And then as I looked into getting that shoe, I looked into other high tops, and Jordans started to pop up, and I'm like, oh, that's the shoe I see everybody like wearing, like the classic, like good looking high top shoe. I didn't know what it was, but it was a Chicago. And when I saw the Chicago, I was like, oh, so that's what this. Then I looked into them, and I'm like, oh, so you can't buy a Chicago. Why can't you buy a Chicago? Oh, because they sell out. Why do they sell out? Oh, there's a community that's like really big into shoes.
Wow.
And as I got more and more into that, I discovered the sneaker community, and I discovered a passion for all the different types of designs of old school basketball shoes, like 1970s, 1980s style basketball shoes, the ones that had like all the crazy tech in them. I'm talking like the Converse Weapons, the old Brooks, Avias, the Reeboks, everybody, like the Reebok pumps. Everybody was trying to come up with some crazy technology to make their sneakers stand out.
100%.
And that is what attracted me to sneakers. It maybe subconsciously was the design element to the crazy amount of innovation that could go into footwear, and that kind of really sparked my love for footwear. And then the first shoe that I bought as a collector was a Jordan 6 Black Cat, and it went from there.
Wow. Yep. Straight in with a Black Cat, man. Respect that. But I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of the design element, because you're absolutely right. I think in those days, it was like a race to discover that technology that would translate as well as potentially air. They wanted to have something that made as much sense. And I think Reebok had a really good. I think the pump was strong. Like it completely spun me when I saw it. I was like, the idea of a shoe that you could increase the comfort in. Like, I'm the comfort king, bro. When I heard that and I saw that, even at a young age, I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is absolutely, I couldn't afford it, but it was absolutely amazing. And yeah, there were a number of other designers, as you said, or brands, as you said, that were utilizing various different types of technology. So yeah, I could understand that sort of sparking a little bit of creative juice inside your mind, especially as you got older, thinking, you know what, this is something I want to do, and maybe like dabbling into looking into those types of technology. You're in Canada right now. Quebec, Canada, to be exact. I always love Canada because I grew up a wrestling fan, and a lot of my favorite wrestlers came from Canada. You know, you've got your Bret Harts and Chris Jericho's and Edge and all of those guys there. So I've always wanted to go to Canada. And Quebec is also an interesting one because they had that tag team called the Quebecers, which I always
Oh,
remember.
nice. Nice.
little
Yeah.
little bit of wrestling trivia for you there still. So yeah, we always love a little bit of Canada, especially Quebec, man. But talk to me about like growing up, because you did mention and allude to it during when you were talking about your first love. Like, what were the shoes that you would see in sort of your heyday growing up? Like, what were the shoes that were most popular on feet?
If I can be honest, right, at a young age, I don't think I was recognizing too many of the types of shoes around me. But what I did recognize when I was a little bit more conscious of the space and, like, you know, as a kid trying to fit in and stuff, was Phat Farms were the cool thing. Everybody wanted the Phat Farms with the straps, and they would leave the straps hanging off all the time. All the time. It was never done up. If you had your straps done up, it's like, why'd you even buy a shoe with a strap? It was made to be worn with them undone. Look, that's not my opinion. That was how kids were wearing them. So I was like, oh, I really want to get these. And this was, you know, the baggy pants, shoe with the strap, snapbacks, basketball jerseys, right? So that was the vibe. That was the fit. And that's what kids were wearing. I'm kind of thinking about elementary school here, right? So this is quite young.
Cool.
As I'm growing up, my personal trajectory growing up, I was into metal, hardcore, punk, that kind of stuff. And it's a very like atypical type of music for sneaker collectors. I find just generally most people align with hip hop and rap, or just something a little bit more, I guess, light, less aggressive. And I think in the mosh pit, you're not wearing really cool kicks. You're wearing Vans, old schools, Converse, Chuck Taylors. That was the uniform. That's what people were wearing. And at some point, which was quite interesting, I think New Balance was trying to make inroads with the hardcore scene. And they were seeding pairs of like 574s to hardcore bands from Quebec and stuff like that. I can remember one band called Obey the Brave, or it was made up of some members of pretty big bands like Despised Icon and stuff like that. And those guys were they would go on stage, they were all rocking a new pair of like New Balance, and like 574s was predominantly the model they were rocking. And I was like, where did this, I was like, we all know New Balance was like kind of lame back then. So I was like, what are these guys doing? And I'm talking like
for real
2009 to like 2011 type stuff, you know? Like I was like this is
hardcore metal, and New Balance does not compete.
Oh, not at all. The only correlation I could see there would be like maybe football hooliganism and like mosh pits and like, you know, scrapping in the streets. Other than that, I don't see the correlation. So that was, you know, New Balance trying to make some ins with that community, and I think they just figured that that's not the community that's ready to spend maybe X amount of dollars on their on the price tag of their sneakers. So
yeah, it's probably a good shot.
Yeah, but growing up, those were the sneakers that I saw. You know, that's what I saw, and I think, you know, there might have been a lot of Air Forces and Air Maxes hidden in there, generally speaking. But that's kind of like, those are kind of the models that I saw growing up.
Like, please correct me, because like over here in the UK, like we've got like different ways that we look at different things. So I might be way off on this. The metal crowd is not the emo crowd. That's a different crowd, right?
Oh man, you've touched on a sore point there.
Like, I would say, I don't know. Talk to me.
It's pretty. It's like they both listen to the same sort of music. To be
like
in it. So, like, if, for example, you can either be a fan of screaming in music or not. And if you are a fan of screaming in music, you're probably one of those two categories. So if you're, you know, painting things with broad strokes, you're essentially going to end up in one of those two camps. The emo camp is like a total. It's on its. I think you might have heard of like emo trap rap and all that stuff. It's just like it's like what Lil Uzi's stuff was when he started. You know, like really like. You know, all my friends are dead, push me to the edge, It's like, it's that kind of stuff. Like, my friends are dead, life sucks, That's like emo stuff. And then like really crazy metal stuff can get into some like other, just maybe like more aggressive or gory themes. I never got into like crazy like death metal, deathcore stuff, which was just pure noise. I got into stuff that was like a bit more melodic, had some harmonies, a little bit of clean singing
Cool.
and stuff in it, but still threw down hard in the pit. You know what I mean?
I hear that, dude. I hear that. Thank you for clearing that up for me, man.
No problem.
I just like to understand certain things. I wonder if this actually is something that you would have been affected by. In the UK, let me talk about myself because it's easier for me to refer to me, right? When I grew up, kicks were definitely not a high priority in my household. So I grew up in an African household. My number one priority is God. Number two is education, and number three is food. And it's one of those three. I'm saying they're interchangeable.
Mate, I grew up in an Italian household, and I'm pretty sure the priorities were the same.
Similar.
Yeah.
My wife's Italian, so I can attest to that.
Exactly, in the same order.
I can attest to that. So obviously, kicks were not high on the list in terms of what was interesting to my mum, right? That meant that sometimes I had to dabble in the dark arts, and ultimately, when I refer to the dark arts, I mean off-brand shoes, maybe some fakeage. Like I'm saying, like stuff that we had to do that we didn't really want to do, but essentially we kind of had to do. Character building shoes, as I like to refer to them now, right? Because people will tell you about yourself when you're wearing those types of shoes. So I just wanted to understand from your perspective, did you ever have to dabble in them dark arts?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I have no problem with fake shoes, but like, let me float a scenario by you here. I have, I'm a collector, and I like to be a completionist if I can be, but given our hobby can attract some pretty crazy resale prices for certain sneakers, it can be hard to be a completionist as a sneakerhead. Yeah. And I have all of the sneakers from the Leica x Nike collaboration. So Leica Studios is the studio that made Paranorman, Coraline, Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings. I'm forgetting the name. The Air Max Susan. Missing Link. Missing Link was the name of the movie. And they have another one coming out. Okay, they've done a shoe for every single one of the releases because I might get it wrong, but like the founder of Leica is Phil Knight's son. So every sneaker, every time he releases a movie, he gets to do a Nike shoe. And they've done a different Nike model every time. And you might have noticed that I mentioned the Paranorman. Okay, we all know about the Paranorman foam posits, or maybe it's a deep cut. I don't know if you're new to sneaker collecting, but there's a Paranorman foam posit that, to me, frankly, feels like the laziest collaboration they've done or release that they've done in all of those sneakers. And this is talking from somebody who has them all, right? Except for that one. The Box Trolls release is absolutely insane. The Coraline's dunk is crazy, right? All the sneakers that they've released are absolutely insane. They've played with crazy materials. They've done some awesome things to change the, to really make the release thematic and representative of the film that it's related to. And then the Paranorman is just like a black foam posit with a little bit of green flames on the side and embroidery of the kid's back of his head on the back of the shoe. I'm like, what is this? No, this is the laziest sneaker collab in the history of sneaker collabs. I'm like, there's not even any green flames in the movie till the end. So what is this about? I'm like, it's about ghosts and zombies. And they're like, don't be afraid to be weird. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Be afraid to be weird. It's about a kid who talks to zombies. It's like Sixth Sense, but in stop motion, So that shoe, right? I would consider a fake pair of those shoes because they're unattainable. Those things people are asking like 10 grand plus
crazy.
For those sneakers.
It's very hard
insane.
To get. Very hard to get.
I'll be honest, I don't think I'd ever wear a foam posit. I don't have any foam posits in my collection. I am not the biggest fan of the silhouette. I think the design was lazy as hell, but as a completionist, on the you can see behind me, I got tons of shoes on display. In my display case, it would look nice. So would I get a fake? I don't know. But like I said, I don't have a problem with them. You know what I mean? Like there's unattainable shoes like that I'm like, yeah, if somebody got a fake of that, like I'm not going to lose my mind. I'll see them walking around in the street and I'll know it's fake. What do you want me to say? I'm not going to say go up to that person and be like, hey, you're too poor to afford those shoes. Take them off. Like, what do you want me to? You know what I mean? Like that's mega gatekeeping.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think the idea, I mean, it's wild. The idea of like calling people out on their thing. I've done it, but I mean, obviously as a joke, I would never actually do it. But the idea of like going up to people and saying, "Oh, I think you're fine your shoes," like, nah, that's definitely not the vibe, man. But then I also haven't considered the idea of like, if you have like a collection and you're missing potentially one, um, and the idea isn't to wear them, because that's another thing, right? The idea isn't to wear them. The idea is to put them on display and to show a complete set, right? Within the home. Obviously, you're not doing this in a museum or anything of that nature. I kind of understand where you're coming from. I don't know if it's something I would do, right? But I mean, I think everybody's view on fakes and all of this stuff is always very personal. Some people have a very guttural, visceral position on it. They're like, "Nah, man, man don't do nothing fake out here." You get me? And like, "Nah, I'm real out here, real bad, man." You get me? But other people are like, "You know what, man? Like, I'll never be able to get that shoe in my size, so I might as well just get the replicated version." And with the whole thing with like UAs, unauthorized replicas or unauthorized authentic shoes, like, it does muddy the waters and blur the lines a lot. So I get it. But yeah, man, it's an interesting take. I have to say.
You know what? I got to say, like, I feel that argument of no fakes always breaks down if you dissect it a little bit. If you dive into specific things like situations and say, would you get one? Would you get one? Would you get? I feel that a lot of, not excuses, but there becomes a lot of instances where you're able to like understand why someone would have a fake. So I'm kind of like, you see a kid walking around, kid's 13 years old, really wants to get into sneakers, but he can't afford them. His parents are really not, my parents were never going to let me buy those sneakers. I had to wait till I was like a 20-something-year-old to get into collecting sneakers. You know what I mean? You have your own money and this and that. A kid doesn't have his own money, wants to get into sneakers, this and that. He buys 6 different replicas. Of course, they're going to go to the hype stuff because that's their introduction to sneakers. Are you going to say that kid's not a sneakerhead? No. Are you going to call that kid out in the middle of the street? A young kid. You, an adult. No. Okay. Who's going to do it? Maybe his friends at school, maybe this and that. But then also, maybe they don't know any better and it passes with them. So it looks like an authentic. So really, it comes down to, are you able to identify that they're fake? Okay. If you can, you going to do anything about it? You going to say anything about it? No. So is it any skin off your back? No. Fine. Okay. So there becomes a situation where it's just like, okay, like you'll let it slide, right? Would you ever purchase a fake? Oh, well, and then there's another question. Like, I wouldn't really, because I don't really have a need to, right? Do I need to buy a fake Jordan 1 Chicago because I don't want to pay the crazy prices of them or whatever? I'm like, not really, because like if I really wanted a Jordan 1 Chicago, I could just get it at the price that it is, or I could get, like, I have a Jordan 1.5. That's fine for me. Jordan 1.5, Jordan
Still
has worn.
Super rare. Yeah.
Jordan has worn the 1.5. It was the sneaker that he had as a transition in between when he was testing out the outsole for the 2.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with it, and it looks exactly like a Chicago
I think
1.
I think it's an amazing story. I love the 1.5 story. So it's like it's such a little, like, it's just a little off cut. It's like, by the way, this guy was wear testing his, you know what I'm saying, like the sole on the second, on the first, and he made a 1.5.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, a lot of people missed that out completely, but that's a very cool shoe to have. Very cool shoe to have.
So, I have that, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't really need to go and get a fake or pay the resale for this. I'll just live in the middle. And I always end up finding something that's just absolute, you'll always probably find a solution that is legitimate, that you can just live down the straight and narrow, and that's it. And as a collector, I show my stuff off. Why would I ever? I don't want to showcase fakes because they are not from the brand. They are unauthorized. So in the back of my mind, there's always this thing of like, yeah, you shouldn't be promoting those things or showcasing them. But what's your stance on fakes? It's hard for me to have one because I'm just kind of like, I can understand in so many other situations why someone might have one, especially for kids. That's where I see it. Is because the ones who are usually walking around wearing fakes are kids. That's the ones I see at conventions that are clearly wearing a shoe that's way too expensive for them, right? Like they're walking around in UNC ones and they're beat. UNC Off-White collab 1 and they're beat. I'm like, clearly that's like a fake, but what are you going to do about it? Like, just,
I see a lot of chunky donkeys and I'm like,
there's no way you're running those into the ground, right? But it's like live and let live, man. Live and let live. If that's what somebody wants to do with their stuff, let them do it. Like that, it's no skin off my back. So do I have a stance on it? No. Would I buy any? No. I have no need to. There's always some legitimate path down the middle to the sneaker that you want. So that's my stance. That's
No,
where I
I
live.
think that's absolutely no. It's a very pragmatic, very understandable view to have, and I feel like I'm essentially the same. There are definitely some shoes I'm aware of. Like I'm a size 12. There are some shoes that I'm probably never gonna get. Definitely not gonna get dead stock. I might be able to get some pairs used, but I'm not gonna be able to get dead stock. But do I love a pair so much so that I'd have to get a fake pair? It's just not. It's
No.
just not there. It's just not there. The desire to stunt on people outside, like with my fake pair of shoes, is just not there. Like I think that if, like you said, I feel like that part of the growth, that part of growth and understanding who you are as an individual and sort of who you want to portray, how you want to be perceived. I feel like that firmly sits within the sort of young, juvenile
Yeah,
sort of
exactly.
area. If you're still an adult with those feelings, I'd struggle with that if I was being honest. I'm not judging anybody, but I'd struggle with that. I don't think it's the vibe personally. And as you said, there's literally always another pair because there's
Yeah,
a million shoes in this
exactly.
world, a
That's the
million
thing.
legit pairs of shoes that you could buy. There are hundreds of thousands sitting, by the way, as well, that
Yep.
people are not buying. So like, there's never a reason to buy a fake if you really. But I think the 100%. Oh, well, I think a lot of people buy fakes to stunt. I think there are a small amount of people that buy fakes because that's all they can afford. But a lot of people buy fakes to stunt. That's the part I don't like. I don't like people buying shoes to make other people feel or act like,
Inferior. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's not what it should be ever about. But who am I? Who
Yeah.
cares? You
Yeah.
get
Live
me?
and let live is the way I
That's,
live.
do you know what? Let's live and let live. Let's do that thing. All right. Talk to me about your current day collection because obviously you refer to it a little bit. Let's get into the EST of KIC. And when I say EST, I'm talking about the newest, the oldest, the rarest, the greatest, the best. You get me?
Okay.
So
Oh my.
like we'll start going. We'll start knocking through these, and you can give me your thoughts and your examples. But talk to me about the oldest pair of shoes you have in your current collection. Hi there. So nice to see you. Sorry to interrupt the pod. I'll be literally 30 seconds. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. And also, if you enjoy the pod, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. It really does help. Also, if you're listening on an audio platform, feel free to give us a review, whether it be positive or negative. Just leave a review. We really, really appreciate it. Also, feel free to listen to our old episodes. And if you ever want to get in contact, if you want to let me know what you're thinking, feeling, or whatever, holler at me. My name is PROZECH. PROZECH on all social media: Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm enjoying TikTok at the moment, so feel free to holler at me. I will always holler back. And with all that being said, I'll let you get back to the pod. Toodles.
Okay, I have to ask a clarifying question here.
Talk to
Is
me.
it the oldest made sneaker,
I
or
love
is it the
this.
sneaker I've had in my collection for the longest? Because there are
When
two
you
different answers.
my days, when you talk to certain men, yeah, when you talk to certain guys that have deep collections,
Yeah.
yeah, right, they're gonna ask you these type of questions, so people get ready. Right, I'm easy with both. Right, the question was originally formulated about regarding the pair you purchased earliest, so that's
Okay.
what it's regard. That's what the question originally was about. But I love the nuance of I bought a shoe yesterday and it was made in the 1900s. I love that as
Okay.
well.
In
So
the
please,
1900s, was it a sandal? Jesus's sandal?
it was literally sand.
I mean,
So
I,
so talk to me, bro. Just like I'm saying, be
yeah.
free, man. Give me both sides.
Okay, I give you both. I give you both because there's a story behind one of them. So
Love it, love it.
the sneaker that's been in my collection the longest is the first one I've ever bought is no longer in my collection. It was the Jordan 6 Black Cat. I got rid of those at some point. You know, shoes have always come into my collection and come out. I'm not a reseller. I just kind of get rid of things as my moods change, as my collection needs to grow in another direction and this and that. Like I've moved out of basketball shoes and just I'm big heavy into runners these days. And as you get older, you learn. quite quickly that comfort is king, and that's where you want to head. So you head to like low
I'm the
tops,
comfort king.
runners.
I'm literally the
Exactly.
comfort king. 100%. I agree.
You are. I heard your diatribe on the Reebok Classic, and I am. I won't reopen that wound, but you have a clear, crazy love for it. That's just comfort king. Let me stunt in silence. Let me stunt in peace. So I won't reopen that, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
Appreciate you, bro.
So the oldest sneaker I have is the Jordan 1.5 Chicago.
Amazing.
If anybody doesn't know what that looks like, imagine a Chicago 1 and imagine a Jordan 2 sole. That is it. It looks a little off or a little weird if you're expecting to just purely see a Jordan 1, but it is honestly like I love it. I love the shoe. The comfort is great. It's there. The materials are just totally fine. Like they're not out of this world, but they'll endure the elements, and they're great. I've walked around. I've beat them up a little bit, so they're great. So that's my oldest. That's like the oldest pair by definition of what this segment is about. But my oldest pair, in terms of age, this is where the story kicks in.
Come on.
I bought a pair of 2004 Air Max Bacon OGs, and they were a size 9.5. And I was always generally a size 10, and I would always buy sneakers in my collection a size 10. As I grew older, I kind of realized, like, yeah, it's kind of snug. Some of these size 10s fit a little smaller, especially as you get into more runners or European runners, like Diodoras or Sauconys or Kangaroos, like that. Those are big. Those are what I'm big into these days. And those runners are narrow, and you feel a size 10 a lot more than you feel an American size 10 on your foot. Let me tell you that. Like, it might be the right size, but it is narrow. So I'm like, shit, I got to start going to 10.5. Then I figure out that my foot, based on the scale that you measure your feet, is actually like a 10.25. And I'm like, well, damn. Okay, that's great. So now I got to buy everything in 10.5. So I have an Air Max 9.5 when I'm actually like halfway to a 10.5. And I'm like, well, I don't know. How's this going to work? So I bought the shoe for a lot. Let's say, like, I'm talking Canadian dollars, but let's say it's like $500. And I get that sneaker, and I'm like, it's too tight. But it's snug, and I'm like, I do a test walk. I walk around the block. I come back home. I take off the shoes. I'm like, what's this? Cracks. Started, and I was like, took a big deep breath. I said, okay, I've heard about sole swapping. What can I do to sole swap? I take the shoes. I go to a sole swapper that we have in Toronto. I say, all on DMs and stuff. I'm like, look, buddy, you do great work. It's Knotsky. He's on Instagram, Knottsky, I believe. And I'm like, man, can you help me? Can you help me sole swap this sneaker? He's like, yeah, okay, sure, no problem. So he's like, you need another outsole.
That's like,
you need another midsole and outsole that are the same. I'm like, there are no white, sort of creamy white with a brown outsoles on Air Maxes, like anywhere, like, and especially none that are cheap, right? Because you have to buy the pair to deconstruct it, to take that sole off, to put it on the one. It's a donor pair. So I'm like, there are no donor pairs here that are cheap enough with that color outsole and all this. Long story short, we end up getting it to him. I end up finding a cheap one. It's close enough. He puts it on the sneaker. I put my foot in it and everything, and I'm like, okay, well, it still doesn't fit fine. I'm like, so I'm telling you, I put about $1,000 into that sneaker, into restoring it. I sold it for $267.
Oh, jeez.
Man, that thing broke my heart. I was just like, get it out the door. Get it out the door. I can't. You know why? The release of the remaster came out. The re-release came out. I bought 3 pairs. I said, I'm done. I've got the new ones. I got 3 pairs, and every pair I bought it on a sliding scale. Each pair I bought got lower and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. I bought an early pair, a slightly early pair, and then one after release, and now they're dirt cheap. I'm like, you know what? The amount of money I've lost on these bacon shoes, I said, I can't deal with it anymore. I'm just going to enjoy my pairs. I got rid of the OG one. I was like, let's move on. I got to go to another chapter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts, man. Do you know what, man? Being a sneakerhead is actually so stressful. It's actually so stressful, man. Like you just want to wear these kicks and you just want to enjoy them. And like you have feet and they have sizes and the shoes don't always match the size. And
Nope.
oh my days, man. Donor pairs. I knew that's where it was going as well, man. The donor pairs always like, cause I had a guest on the podcast a few months ago, Moses PSD from London Sneaker Club. Shout out to Moses. And there is an art to selecting a donor as well. Like that whole thing is quite scientific, man. You can't just grab a random like sole from a random no, it needs to be a similar shape, and if it can't be the exact shoe, there are specific shoes that have very similar outsoles and midsoles, so it needs to be really done quite specifically. And yeah, sometimes the journey and getting the donor can be as expensive as getting the original shoe. It's not
No.
So
no.
the things we do, man. But I respect it.
It's not for the
respect
faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart or light of wallet, if you might put it that way.
I was definitely gonna say, man. All right, talk to me, man. What's your newest pair of shoes? What's the latest?
The latest pair of shoes is not the Asics Marvel Kith collection. It's, in my opinion, slightly better. To quote my buddy Doubled Up from the Doubled Up podcast, Scott, right? Or is it Matt? Oh, good. Well, anyways, guys, if you hear this, you know I'm talking about. You know I'm talking. I don't know who said it. He said when you find a sneaker on sale, you actually end up appreciating that sneaker more because you're like, I bargain hunted for this sneaker and it looked badass and it delivers X amount of value. It's good quality materials, and I only paid X price, right?
Sounds like Scott. He's the bargain hunter.
I've got these two Saucony Shadow 5000s. I have one that looks almost exactly like the Gambit colorway from the Marvel collection, which is insane. Okay. And one that looks like the extremely rare Wolverine 1975 pair that's like slightly different in terms of the materials are kind of flipped on the lateral and medial sides of the sneaker. And if you guys are watching this in video, you'll see I'm holding them up so that you can take a look. These things look almost indistinguishable from the Asics colorways wise. They look indistinguishable from the collection that they did with Kith and Marvel.
Very cool shoes, bro.
Mate, I got 4 pairs of Sauconys on sale for $85 Canadian each. That's like 40 pounds each
this
for
is
4
crazy.
pairs. So those are my latest.
You did it. You broke the system, man. And to be fair, I mean, Saucony is definitely having a moment right now. So I feel like you're definitely you're catching them pretty much, I think, just before they're about to sort of get into the full length and breadth of their time, because we saw it happening with New Balance, but things are just starting to slowly bubble with Saucony. That Grid Shadow 2, that I think it's a Grid Shadow 2000 or Grid Shadow 200. I can't remember exactly what it is, but that silhouette is crazy.
It's very nice.
That silhouette is crazy. There are certain shoes that are coming out, plus obviously the collaborations with J-Tips and other collaborations that are in the works as well. Like, yeah, I've got a lot of time for Saucony, and before the end of the year, bro, I'm dipping in. I'm gonna get my first Saucony.
They're cheap too. Like, that's the thing. Is they're cheap shoes. Like, you can get kind of like a similar quality runner to a New Balance, which is very expensive, for a fraction of a price. So you'll move towards Saucony. No, I think people's sneaker tastes are changing. The way that we've seen New Balance rise today is kind of like what we're going to see with alternatives like Asics, like Saucony, possibly like other brands. I don't know if Diadora or others, like I'm big into other brands that are big in Europe, right? So you've got Diadora, you've got Kangaroos, you've got Sonras, you have just a ton of other Le Coq Sportif. There are a lot of those brands that are just
big. You said that
big
beautifully, by the way.
Yeah, that's the French way of saying it. I said it right. So you have all these brands that are very Euro focused. Maybe they'll get they'll get some exposure in the US. I think it'll come down to like who they partner with and kind of getting that exposure up in the US. But ASICS is here. Saucony is here. They're big. They're at SneakerCon. They're at Complex. I was at ComplexCon last year. They had a giant booth releasing the Saucony, the rabbit pair. I don't look like a rabbit thing. And I was like, this is really cool. They had a really nice display, and I was like, they're able to make inroads here because New Balance has morphed tastes towards runners and things like this, and people are just, I think they're a little bit over the basketball silhouette. They're moving towards that. Nike, I think they had mentioned in their earnings calls, and I think the Complex Sneakers show now, or podcast as it was before, has mentioned that, you know, they said we want to keep pushing out the Vomero, but we don't want to push it too hard. It's also got a very high price point, but people are using it as like the anti-hype shoe because they're into Nike and they like runners, but they don't want to jump on the SBs. They're tired of SBs. They're tired of Dunks. They're tired of all the old stuff that Travis was wearing. It's like, what's the new vibe? The new vibe is the runners. Taylor Swift is walking around in New Balances, New Balance 550s, New Balance runners, the mesh runner boy summer, all that kind of stuff. Like everybody was into mesh boys, all these things. People are into this, and it's changing tastes towards runners. And, you know, I think Saucony and ASICS are going to be the next on you know, to blow up. If they keep going like New Balance did with like collaborations and things like that, that's what puts them on a lot more people's radars.
I completely agree. I think obviously the can never really go wrong with a Kith collab. So yeah, I think what ASICS did, I think ASICS have had an amazing run in terms of being super underrated and super understated in terms of being able to produce quality shoes. Over a long period of time, obviously continually focused on that runner silhouette, but like still have amazing collaborations as well. But they just always seem to be under the radar. Same with Saucony, everything just seems to be completely under the radar. And I think they're on the cusp of having a massive moment, both of them. So yeah, I completely agree. And I'm definitely on the wave, man. I need to get my gel lights up. I need to definitely get involved in that. And that Grip Shadow, bro, I need to get involved, man. I don't want to be that guy 6 months from now trying to pick them up and they're all on resale. You get me? Like everything's going to be real tough to get. So like I need to get involved early, man. And Christmas is coming up. I'm going to treat myself. You get me?
That's it.
All right, bro, man. You mentioned a couple of rare pairs, man, but talk to me, man. What is your rarest pair of shoes?
Oh my god, the rarest pair of shoes. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if this is the rarest, but it's one of the rarest. Is the Coraline Dunk. I absolutely love this sneaker, man. I don't even know where to begin. The release for this thing was insane. The packaging is great. The thematic use of materials is awesome.
Beautiful shoe.
You know, I'm a big fan of stop motion. I've done stop motion animation. You know, I majored in media studies and communication and throughout university. I've seen my fair share of films. I'm a huge film nerd. So the fact that I was able to pick these up very early, like before all the hype around Dunks and everything was picking up, I got these things for like $500. They are not worth that. And $500, I'm talking like take every price that is a dollar value that I'm giving you, and maybe cut it in half, and that's pounds. You know what I mean? So you know, call it 275 pounds that I picked them up for. It's not bad at all because they definitely don't go for that today.
Nah,
you know?
Bro. Yeah, that's a pretty strong cut, man, right there. Yeah, it's really
that's
strong.
one of the rarest because there's very few made.
Okay, talk to me, man. What would you consider to be the greatest pair in your collection?
I'm going to be so biased, but it has to be the sneaker that I'm working on right now for Volecoeur. You know, I'll say it. You can say it Volecoeur, you can say Volecoeur, which is the French way of saying it, which means stolen heart if you break down the words. And the reason I came up with the brand name, I'll just give you a bit of background on the brand. The reason I came out with the brand name Volecoeur was because I was so sick and tired of seeing a friggin' SB Dunk popping up all the time, and people just like, oh, I customize, like, oh, everybody has the same freaking shoes. They're borrowing the story of some other great famous athlete at some point. This and that. Look, I understand. If you identify with that story, that's great. The important thing is the story behind it. And when you're just pumping out colorways of a sneaker that you know is just hot, like the Vomero, okay, we're going to make a yellow one, we're going to make a red one, we're going to make a green, we're going to make a blue. And it's the same color blocking, you've just changed the colors every time. Or every single Yeezy comes out with a sand earth-related colorway. And I'm like, bro, you can't even tell. You're taking a Pantone chart and you're moving up one square at a time, and you're releasing the sneaker. That's essentially what you're doing. It's like lazy. It's so lazy. There's no heart.
Bro, he definitely did that. He did
That's
that.
what I'm saying. And then you take these colorways that are so, and then they would throw one random one in there that's like blues and purples and this and that, and it's like, what is this? And then they go back to their regular schedule programming of moving the square one color up the Pantone at a time. And I'm like, this is lazy. There's no heart in this design. Look, also, you're probably yelling at the screen, Matt, you're such an idiot. They're public traded companies. They have to make profit. They have to sell units. Then I know that. That's fine. I get it. I totally understand that. I'm a very business-minded creative. I work in the corporate world. I work in corporate public relations for news media companies. I totally understand all of that. But when your designers are just swapping colors and releasing sneakers, they're not telling stories anymore. Be it as they may, maybe Nike can't do that all the time anymore, and they just use it. They reserve that for SB collaborations and collections, and that's how they tell stories. Fine, that's how they do it. But everyone that I release, every clothing collection, every sneaker, everything that I release is going to have a story behind it. Period. That is Volecoeur. That is the heart. The story. Story is the heart. So I focus on designing everything with purpose-driven design. That's my motto. If it doesn't have a purpose in telling the story that I'm trying to convey through the collection, it doesn't get included on the shoe. I'm not going to just make a sneaker black because it looks cool black. No, I'm going to make it black because it's part of a thematic collection or release that has to do with insert meaning, insert value, insert story there. And that's essentially what Volecoeur does. So, the sneaker that I love the most right now, or that's, means the most to me, is the Pulse Runner. I'm going to be releasing the Pulse Runner for pre-orders early next year. It's something that has had to, I was going to do it this year. We had rumblings in the news that there may be a recession and things coming up in North America. Made me very uncertain. And as an independent, this is something that you have to weigh heavily when it's purely funded 100% from your own finances. You have to be very cautious of this. And, I was just like, this year was something else. This year became a year for me to just kind of come back to, not back to basics. I moved, right? I renovated. There were a lot of things in my personal life that I was taking care of instead, right? And I'm going to get back to the sneaker early next year when I can release it in confidence to everybody. So it's the Pulse Runner. That's the sneaker that I'm most proud of right now. Yeah.
That is I absolutely love that. And without a shadow of a doubt, completely agree with you in terms of storytelling. I think that's something that's we've been missing. We've been missing a lot of that, and I think you can tell that there's certain shoes come out and they have a really, really interesting story, or a story that really engages or connects with people, and they fly off. And it's not hard to see where there's engagement, where there's understanding, where there's heartfelt messaging. People are gonna get involved. Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for connections. We're looking to understand. We're looking for a reason why. Because there's like, you don't need to sell a sneaker to a sneakerhead. Like,
no,
we're already in.
Have you seen the crazy amount of hype that people who are not sneakerheads, your aunt, your mom, your uncle, were asking how to buy the chunky donkeys. People wanted to buy the chunky donkeys. They had no idea what sneakers were. And you know why? Because of the story behind it and the release. Stories. It comes in an ice cream tub. I mean, the whole thing. The release, that's what makes a sneaker have value, is the story.
Like, this is it. And I say it all the time. Like, I'm a story guy. I need to understand. I need to connect. I need to believe. I need to feel it's genuine. I need to feel, especially when there's a collaboration between two massive companies, or a brand is coming out with a particular shoe, and it's coming out for a particular reason. I just want to understand. I just want to know. Don't just cookie cutter these kicks out and just start flinging them out to me, because you're not gonna, for me, and this is the reason why Nike has seen a decline, and in general we're seeing a lot of shoes sitting nowadays, because especially Nike being the behemoth it is, it's decided to take the tact of, okay, people love Jordan 1s, people love Jordan 4s. Let's make loads of Jordan 1s and Jordan 4s. Let's make loads of Jordan
They pump them
1s.
out.
No, let's pump it out. Let's pump it out. People love dunks. Let's make all the dunks. Every color. No stories. We've got the back to school pack. We've got the Syracuse. We've got the Kentucky. We've got story. We've got all of these different dunks. Not even talking about SBs and the millions of stories around SBs. We've got all of these stories, but no, we've got a bunch of colorways that we're just flinging out because we can. Right? There's obviously going to be a climb. There's obviously it's not going to connect.
Let me ask you something. You have your entire collection behind you, and you have to save maybe 5 pairs of shoes. What are you going to go to? I can tell you right now, I don't even have to wait for your answer. I know that you're going to run to the sneaker that your aunt got you for Christmas one year, the sneaker that you ran a marathon in, the sneaker that came in a clear, transparent box that has flames painted on the side from a designer. You know, you're going to go to like the Turdunkins, right? Like from Concepts with a box that has an oven on fire. Right? Like it's a foldable box. It's crazy. You're going to go and grab those sneakers. And you know why?
100%.
It's because it's the stories. Those are the ones that stay in people's collections. They're not
way
the
it
ones
makes you
that people
feel,
let
bro.
go first. Exactly.
I love it. You're absolutely right, man. And I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago and I mentioned this, and I think it's so important. As a sneakerhead, as a self-confessed sneakerhead, somebody that loves kicks, I'm not interested in having a million shoes in my collection. My interest is in connections.
Yeah.
I need to connect to the shoes that I have, right? Connections, not collections, bro. It's more than the amount of shoes. Now, respectfully, you may have a wall of Jordan 1s in every single colorway that's come out, right? From powder blue to baby pink. Good luck to you, and well, if you love that silhouette and that's what you're about, all well and good. And I'm not judging you, but all I'm saying is, right, every shoe in my collection, I have a personal connection with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Personal connection. There is a reason for every single one of them. I don't just have them just because I have them. You get me? I have them for a reason. You understand? So I completely get where you're coming from, man.
Look, there's a very romantic and almost,
that's the right word,
primal and almost primal at the very root of human existence. I've studied sociology as well, so forgive me for throwing all of my passions into this podcast at once, but metal music and sociological theory is like, we've been telling stories since the dawn of time, even since before we could talk. When we could communicate, we've been telling stories. We've been telling stories of cave paintings on walls. We've been telling stories since we could write or talk, and we've been preserving those stories. And one of the ways that I'm trying to take this to the next step in preserving the stories of a sneaker is with all of my releases, they come with QR codes. If you scan the QR code, you can go to the website where I have preserved in an archive the story of that sneaker and the release, because I found that you can lose a lot of those stories in the secondary market, right?
Yeah.
If you're the third person to own that sneaker, the second person to own that sneaker, you may not have known all about the drop that happened 2 or 3 years ago. But if you scan the QR code and you go back to the website and you can see on the archive, that story is forever, forever saved in history for that brand, for Volecoeur, right? You can see that, you can read it, you can identify with the story all over again. Let me show you one that I'm very, very proud of doing. This sneaker had just come out before my most recent sneaker, okay? This is the Railway, okay? The Volecoeur Railway release. And for this sneaker, everything on it is materials that were worn by the railway workers who built the Trans-Canadian Railway, the Canadian Pacific Railway and the Transatlantic Railway for the U.S. that connected our respective countries. They were built by Chinese migrant workers, and I made this to give them some flowers when Stop Asian Hate was going on, and we really needed to recognize that you're not supposed to be, like, it doesn't need to be said, but bullying people in public or pushing them around in buses and hurling insults at them and stuff, right? We have to recognize that actually, it was because of Chinese migrant workers who connected our countries with the railways. It was a way that I could make that narrative more tangible for people. So this is based on research of what materials they would have worn. You've got corduroys, you've got suedes, you've got leather, you've got denim, you have another type of denim, you have the heel from the work boot type plastic, rubber, and there's a little hang tag here of a railway spike that came with every pair. So I was really proud with this sneaker. I've got a lot of props on this sneaker for the storytelling at sneaker conventions. So yeah, like storytelling is extremely important to me. It's at the heart of everything that I release, and that's Volecoeur. So that's where I'm at.
What I absolutely love, especially when you get to actually talk to a designer, somebody that clearly, as you sort of displayed, is sort of poured their heart and soul into sort of everything that they've done, is being able to understand sort of the length that people go to be able to communicate a story like that, and be able to pay homage to people that have sort of suffered and had to go through certain things in order for others to benefit. I really, really appreciate that, Matt. That is very, very, very cool, man. Like, we live in the first world, and sometimes we look at designers, especially when they're doing runway shows, when they have these like sort of real fancy parties in Paris or whatever, and you're like, these are a pretentious lot, man. They're out here just messing around, but the depths that these guys go to, the depth they have to go to in their hearts and in their minds to be able to pull out these designs is actually unbelievably admirable. Like, it's crazy what people have to do, and yeah, I completely respect it, bro. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us, man.
Of course,
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think this is completely going in a different direction, because I feel like we've done some deep stuff right now. So let's shake it off a little bit. Sorry for the Taylor Swift reference.
Oh my God! Listen, man, when I hopped onto this podcast, I knew you were trouble when you hopped on.
Come on, we're doing it. I literally only know 2 of our songs though, because I'm a bad man like that. So, but like, if you were literally like running out of your house, and you're not putting on a massive fit, you're not thinking like, oh, okay, I have to go this place or that place. You're literally just running out the house. What's the pair of shoes that potentially sits by the door or is just really, really comfortable? That sort of bop to the shop shoe. What is that shoe? Talk to me about that shoe.
Air Max 90s for me. 100%. That's like my go-to. Just throw them on. I can slip them on. I don't have to untie them or nothing. I grind my foot against the skin of my knuckle to slide my foot in, and I'm out the door. You know what I mean? It's that quick pain that you get on your hand before you run out the door. Yeah, that's me.
That knuckle scrape is so...
Yeah. It's so relatable. Everybody has felt that. Like,
that knuckle scrape is so real.
Yeah.
That knuckle scrape is so real. I need to book a PD, bro. Because that knuckle scrape is so real right now, bro. I respect that. All right, talk to me, man. If your house is on fire, I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think we need to ask it. If your house is on fire, and you can only grab one, what is that one pair of shoes?
I'm grabbing the Coraline Dunks for sure. And if I'm not grabbing the Coraline Dunks, I'm grabbing my latest sample, and I'm getting out the door, because the sample process of making sneakers is incredibly freaking expensive.
I respect it, dude. I respect it, man. I respect it. And do you know what? Like, obviously, let's just touch a little bit on that, because I think like we can take a little sort of peek behind the veil. Like, the process of making shoes, like...
Man, you're opening a can of worms, I'll tell you right now.
I know. I mean, obviously, I don't want you to go into sort of every single detail, but like, obviously, we've talked a lot about inspiration, but the actual process of making the shoe.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the sort of process of making the shoe, the elements you have to put together in order for it to make sense. And then, obviously, Like anybody could make. I know, like people make garments that they sort of try things, but you have to test them. It has to be something that people can actually wear. So, how do you go from a potential prototype or a trial version to the actual real shoe?
Yeah, what's tough with sneakers is that you don't get to try the fit and wear these things until you've already invested a lot into them. With a sweater, it can be a lot cheaper of a process to do trial and
Respectfully.
error. With a sneaker, it's very different. I can tell you straight up, I don't mind, lifting the veil on some of this. And again, I'm going to talk in what would typically be USD, which I guess is not too far off from pounds. But you can't launch a sneaker from scratch for under $10,000 for sure, guaranteed. Yeah. It depends on the route you're taking forward, right? But if you are completely creating an original sneaker from scratch, you cannot do it for about under $10,000 US. If you are making, and it's even more expensive, that's why I said, depending on the route you take forward, if you're making your own sole, okay, your own outsole and midsole and all this, it's exponentially more expensive. That is 1.5 grand a foot per foot. Everybody's got 2 feet, so that's 3 grand a mold. And those molds are metal molds. They're made so that you can put the rubber in them and get the sneaker, like the outsole that you need, the outsole and the midsole that you need. Those are made in metal. You get to keep those, whatever, but you got to do it for every size you want to do. Do you want to do a full size run? Okay. Imagine you're doing a men's size run from 7 to 11. And that's why some people wonder, why don't you offer it in women's sizing? Why don't you offer it in half sizing? Let me explain. If you want to do one full men's size run, you're going to have to do a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Sometimes that's why people don't offer 12. You do 12, but they're likely not going to have 13. They're not going to have 14, whatever. Forget about it. If you're bigger than a size 12, you're probably not going to get included, right? So that's
Jeez.
from 7 to 12, okay? All right, let's say you're doing all of those sizes. Are you going to do half sizes? Double that number of molds that you have to make, and that's 3,000 per mold. I'm not going to get into the math of it because it can vary wildly, but that's extremely expensive. So a lot of people are going to go with a mold that they can use, and that they can use is going to have to be something that exists on the market. I can tell you right now, a lot of them look like real garbage, or you're going to get these shoes that are made with really high minimum order quantities, in which case you have to order a lot of shoes and you don't even know how it's going to go yet. You just have to, okay, I'm going to order 500 to 1,000 outsoles and just hope that the production process goes well, because they won't sell them to you without that, unless you're able to find a lower minimum order quantity manufacturer. And then when you do find one, you better believe that the cost per pair is going to go up. And then your retail price is going to have to go up. When you have sneakers like kangaroos that are producing, they can produce up to 500 pairs or 250 pairs. And I'll know that because I have a few pairs and they're numbered, right? So it'll say X number out of 500 pairs. Those guys can probably produce those things by hand in smaller quantities. Okay. Well, and let's be real, right? 250 to 500 is a small quantity in the large scheme of things, but as a new brand where you have maybe 1,000 something followers, are you going to generate enough demand to sell out 250 to 500 pairs? I don't know. So it's a big investment risk. So that's another thing you have to consider. So, okay, you come out with that. Those guys, when they come out with their shoes, I don't know if you've tried buying a pair of kangaroos or Sonras, but those things have a retail price of, again, I have to convert these things to Canadian dollars, almost like $400 Canadian.
Yes, expensive shoes.
And it's like, well, that's an expensive shoe. And then they sell out. They've managed to create like a niche community of people who are really into these handmade, made in Germany sneakers that will buy these sneakers and keep them. And then the problem is, like, they won't resell for that price because it's a very high price point. And if you want to make your money back, you have to sell it for the same price or more. And the demand isn't that high because it's a niche community. So it's an interesting dynamic, but the retail price for sneakers goes up accordingly as your manufacturing costs go up and as you yourself have to pay more of those manufacturing costs. Now, I don't mind pulling back the veil on some of this stuff because Nike, everybody thinks Nike can produce a sneaker for about $80 or $50 to $80. And or pounds or whatever you want to call it. And that's fine. They probably could. And they'll sell it to you for 100 to 200. Fine. They definitely can, right? The retail rule is take what it costs you to make the shoe and mark it up 3 times. That way you can do 50% off sale and this and that, and you still won't lose money on the production. Fine. But, that's not what it costs for independents who are trying to make the name for themselves with good quality materials, good production. They're putting their focus into, a really good final product. Their prices are going to go up, and that's what you got to pay to support independence and to support good quality. So I totally don't mind breaking these down for you. If you have other questions on sneaker manufacturing and production, I'm more than happy to share on that as well.
I appreciate that, man. I think what you've given us is perfect, because I think ultimately, as consumers, we have these ideas in our minds that, it probably costs Nike $5 to make these $200 shoes, and obviously those are outlandish numbers. It doesn't correlate. It won't make sense. We know for a fact that Nike are making a significant amount of profit on each shoe, but obviously that profit margin is probably not as wide as we think it is, and there are obviously reasons for that. These are mass-produced shoes, and ultimately for Nike, because the way that you broke down the sizing is crazy, right? Yeah. For Nike to be able to produce a full family size run, right? You're talking probably I'm saying 150, 200, 200,000 for all of those lasts and all of the, and the thing is, because those silhouettes are created, maybe it's okay, but if it's a new silhouette,
that's why Nike and Adidas, that's why when we say we want to see new product, but then no one shows up to buy the new product, it's like the brands have to put a huge upfront investment to see if that's going to work in putting it out in full family sizing and everything like that. Man. It's extremely expensive. I can tell you right now as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Kicks Chronicles. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, rate, review, and all that good stuff. And remember, full video version is available on YouTube, audio versions available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.